Hi guys, so if you're watching this video you probably already know that I make movies. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the films that inspired my last short film, Without Heartbeat, which I released last year in December. I mean, I say last year, it's 2024, I released it in December of 2023. It only came out like a month ago. But anyways, I'd like to eventually do a video where I just give you a tour of my collection, but the thing is, like, it's never really complete. I always feel like there's more I can add to the collection, and it would also just be easiest to do with a cameraman instead of doing it alone. It would be more difficult. But for now, I'm just going to be talking to you about a couple films that I own which inspired Without Heartbeat. And I think the biggest influence to Without Heartbeat was this trilogy of films, the Game trilogy from Japan, and I can hear the camera lens tweaking. Sorry, there's nothing I can do about that with the audio right now because I don't have much equipment to go off of. Even when I make my films, I don't usually have much equipment, but there's nothing I can really do about the audio right now. Anyways, hopefully you can see that in focus right now. I don't know how well that's focusing, but this is the Game trilogy. These came out from the years 1978 to 1979 in Japan. And they're a really cool set of films. They also, the main character in this film inspired this guy, hold up, this guy from this show, Cowboy Bebop, which a lot of you have probably heard of, and which is a really good anime if you haven't seen it. But you don't need me to tell you that. But this guy right here was inspired, at least the look of him, not really the character, not really the personality, but his look was heavily inspired by this guy, and you can kind of probably see the resemblance there. I'm guessing you can see it, especially with the hair. Anyways, this movie, this series is really good. There's a bit of a problem with misogyny, if I'm going to be completely honest. This character is actually kind of an asshole. He, how do I put this? He does not treat women very respectfully in this series, and that's kind of just a thing. That's the 70s for you. Filmmakers and I guess other artists didn't really care if they offended you, so they just put whatever the fuck they wanted in their movies. And there are some kind of uncomfortable scenes of the way he treats women, in particular in the first film. And with each film it gets a little bit better until the Execution Game, where he's not as extreme. But in this film he actually like rapes, I think, 2 different women. And it's really uncomfortable. And the film isn't really even making any sort of commentary on misogyny. It's just there. So, you know, I don't really know how I feel about that. But for the most part, these are really cool, slick films. It's about a hitman for hire. And he's, for the most part, just a badass. I mean, look at him. Amazing. So yeah, these films are pretty cool. There's not really much else for me to say because I don't want to spoil any of the movies for you, but the third film, The Execution Game, is so good. And man, I really wish my camera wasn't doing that tweaking sound, going in and out of focus, because I'm not about to do a retake of this. Anyways, The Execution Game, this is the third film of the trilogy, and this one is easily the best. It is so good. It's so good. Just watch it. The Execution Game was really the biggest influence, but even just the cinematography, I really like the look that crime films have from the 70s. Doesn't matter what country they're in. I just like that look. There's just a certain grittiness, there's a grime that you don't really capture in any crime films from other decades. Like, overall, sure, there are films from the 80s and films from the 60s and maybe even from the 50s, if I really think hard about it. And even like if you go back to the Carol Reed noirs from Britain, there are films that kind of capture city life in a really unique way, but overall, if you look at crime films from each decade, overall you don't really see that type of grittiness, the kind of lived-in environment that you get with these on-location crime films where they just went on the streets and filmed. There are some Yakuza films that I also really like. These are technically Yakuza films, although they're not usually categorized in America as Yakuza. A lot of people just call these action films, but there are some good Yakuza films. And again, with a lot of these Japanese crime films, if you watch them, I mean, just be aware that they might have some offensive stuff in there with the treatment of women. But this film in particular, Cops vs. Thugs, this is also a film by the great filmmaker Fukasaku. I have both of these. I don't have Battles Without Honor and Humanity, the series that he's most well known for, just because I want to get the big box set and it's really expensive because it's limited, and I didn't buy it when it came out. But both of these films, this actually has a, I don't remember this one being as sexist, to be honest with you. And maybe the way I'm talking, I make these films seem like worse than they are, but it's just, you gotta understand, you know, that they were made during a different time, so they're not as politically correct. This film I don't remember being as bad though. This one was actually really good, Graveyards of Honor. So again, the look of this film, the overall feel, the grittiness had a big impact on Without Heartbeat. It's called Yakuza Graveyard. This one's really cool. It's just cool, and a lot of these movies also got like a nice jazz soundtrack. So they just, especially the soundtrack, the soundtrack for these films are very jazzy, and I just fuck with it so much. It's just so cool, and really, like, today you would never get films like this where they just show the, like, even the look of the film grain I like, and the look of the film stock, the colors, is just, you can't really replicate it today. And I didn't necessarily try to replicate it. I did my own thing, but I kept those movies in mind so that I could maybe not emulate them, but be inspired by them a little bit. So this is another good Yakuza film that I really like. Some older Yakuza stuff that I just, oh, I put that in the wrong spot, that I just fuck with so much. This one, Massacre Gun, with Joe Shishido, who recently died a couple years ago. I say recently, he died in 2020, so not that recent anymore, but it feels recent. But this is really cool. This is in black and white. Now, Joe Shishido was in a lot of great Seiji Suzuki films. Like, I believe Suzuki directed A Cult Is My Passport, Take Aim at the Police Van. I know he directed Youth of the Beast, which is one of my favorite, and I want to get that on Blu-ray, but I don't have it right now. He also did, like, what's it called? Tokyo Drifter. Anyway, Seiji Suzuki. Anyways, yeah, this is really cool. This is not directed by Suzuki, but it's got Joe Shishido, and it's just really cool. It's also got a great jazz soundtrack. It's done in black and white, so it's got a really cool noir look to it. Speaking of noir, since now is a good time to segue into noir, there are a lot of crime films from the 50s and 40s that had a big impact. And actually, when I initially came up with the idea of Without Heartbeat, I imagined it in black and white. It wasn't until later when I started thinking about shooting it in color. This is not really a noir film, but this also didn't have as big of, like, when I was thinking of the movie, I wasn't thinking of this, but I think it had a subconscious impact, because the more I think about this film, the more I see Without Heartbeat in it, the more I see the inspiration. This is also one of my favorite movies, The Possessed, also known as The Lady of the Lake. The Italian title, I believe, is La Donna del Lago. I could be wrong. I'm just going off of memory there, and I don't speak Italian. This is so good, though. This is just an amazing, amazing movie. I mean, look at that cover. Look at that cover. I'm going to make sure you can see it. Look at that. Hold up. It's not focused. There you go. There you go. This is already 9 minutes, so I'm probably going to be talking a lot, because once I start talking about these movies, I can't stop. But this is a giallo film. It's really light on giallo. This is 1966, so this is early in the giallo genre. Giallo, if you're not familiar, it's like Dario Argento movies, like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Tenebrae, Opera. Those are all Argento films. It's a mix of crime and horror, basically. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but generally, because I don't want to go onto a tangent about something else, they're basically a mix of crime and horror. They usually got a lot of nudity and a lot of blood. This one doesn't really have any nudity that I can remember. It's done very tastefully and artfully, so you don't really see anything explicit. But it's about this author this author who goes into this hideaway town, basically, this sleepy town, small town in Italy, and it's basically his hideaway where he goes to refresh his mind, to get inspiration. But really the reason why he's going this time is so he can see this girl, Tilda. Her name's Tilda, correct? I believe it is. Let me see. Yes, Tilda. Who works at the hotel that he stays at. And he goes there and can't find her anywhere. And he then becomes obsessed with finding out what happened to her. And that's really all I'm going to say. It is so good. I mean, this is one of my favorite films, and no one ever talks about it. It's if you don't really know movies that well, this isn't really considered one of the essentials of Italian cinema. It's not considered an international classic, but it's really, really good. Don't watch it with the English dub. The English dub does not sound good. It's got really bad acting, and it just feels really flimsy. Watch it, like hokey. It's not good. It kind of ruins it. I don't really watch dubs just because of that, because a lot of them are trash. So I just listen to the film with the Italian track and the subtitles. Watch it with the subtitles. Even if you don't like subtitles that much, it'll just make the experience so much better. It's so cool. It's just a really haunting film, and it's about the present and the past intertwining. And as the film goes on, this character, you start to question how much of what's going on is real and how much of it is in his head and how much of it he dreams up. It's really cool. And it's also based off of a true story that happened in, I think, the 1950s. Probably the 40s. It's so good. And it was initially based off of a book. But yes, go check this out. And I want to get the book, but it's in Italian. I don't think there's an English translation, so it'd be kind of hard for me to track it down. I've tried. This movie is so good, though. So out of all these films that I'm showing you, this is the one I recommend the most. It is amazing. Wow, so good. So yeah, and especially without going into spoilers, the way the main character interacts with the past is really similar to Without Heartbeat, and the way Larry's character, the main character, if you don't know who Larry is, he's the main character in the film. It's the way like Larry interacts or imagines the past and either sees potentially a ghost or maybe imagines a ghost in Without Heartbeat without going into too many details. I'm assuming you've seen that film if you're watching this. But yes, that movie is so good, and that didn't directly inspire it, but I think on a subconscious level it's inspired really everything I've made since I watched it. I watched that years ago in like 2020. Okay, so some noir. There are a lot of great noir films that I really love. Okay, the first one I ever watched, and still one of my favorites, The Maltese Falcon. Just a really good movie. The look of film noir did have a pretty big impact. I mean, maybe if I could rewrite Without Heartbeat, I would have made the dialogue more pulpy and hard-boiled, like in those noir films I love, but I was trying to go for authenticity. Okay, so Carol Reed, I mentioned him earlier. He made one of my favorite films, The Third Man, another great crime film. I don't own a copy of that because I'm holding out hope that I can get the really rare Criterion Blu-ray. These are Criterion's, these right here. So this is a Criterion movie. If you're not familiar, they're a boutique Blu-ray label, kind of higher end. They did The Third Man, and it went out of print a long time ago, like maybe over 10 years ago. But they put it out on Blu-ray, and it's really expensive, very collectible. I'm just hoping I can get that copy of it instead of the standard Blu-ray. So that's why I don't have it yet. But I plan to eventually get it. Or maybe it'll come out on 4K if it hasn't yet already. No, it hasn't. So maybe I can get it on 4K eventually instead of Blu-ray. Then get higher quality. This is really good though. This is a later film that this director, he was a British director named Carol Reed, that he made. What he would do is he would shoot on location, so he would go out in the city and shoot his movies there. Obviously, films, scenes that took place inside different places were usually shot in studios, but especially for the era, this was kind of a big deal to go out and shoot, and it was taken from the Italian neo-realists who, by rebelling against the fascist government, which was forcing them to shoot movies in the studio system and basically replicate what Hollywood was doing. However, with propaganda. Now, at the time, everyone was doing propaganda. If you were involved in the Second World War, your films were in some way used as propaganda. Even like, especially Casablanca, that's propaganda right there. But the neorealists were rebelling against that. So you got people like Rossellini, Roberto Rossellini, who were making, and even early Federico Fellini, like this film, who were taking to the streets what the French New Wave would later do, and they were shooting in their cities. And Carol Reed ended up doing that, and he shot post World War II and bombed out cities. So this one was, I believe, Berlin. Yeah, he shot this in Berlin. Let me just double check on that. Did he shoot this in Berlin? I think he did. Yeah. Yep, it's in Berlin. And it's between divided Berlin too. And you see like these bombed out war-torn cities. Real civilians as extras and bit characters. And also something really integral to his movies. I don't remember for sure if he did it with this one, but a lot of them, particularly The Third Man, had they didn't have orchestrated scores. They had more cultured music. And especially The Third Man, that's got a really great soundtrack. It's kind of hit or miss with some people. A lot of people nowadays like to compare it to SpongeBob because of the instrument it was recorded on. They say it sounds like SpongeBob music. I think it sounds good. That's just me though. So it's kind of hit or miss. I really like the soundtrack. It's got a really iconic, the Harry Lime theme is really iconic. And you know, since I'm talking about it, hold on. I got something I can show you about The Third Man music. Hold up. This is not related to The Third Man. This is an old Italian poster from the 50s. But if you switch it around, I have but I have a decently sized movie collection. Sorry, you can see a movie collection here. A decently sized movie poster and other forms of memorabilia collection, like different, like comics and advertisements and stuff. This is part of it. This is one of the first things I got. I got this actually at an antique mall. It's not worth a lot, but it looks really cool. And I used to have it framed in my room, but I took it out of the frame because I was worried it would get discolored by the sun over time. So I want to get, if I ever put this back in a frame, it's going to be like a nice protective frame that protects against UV lights. This is an original American newspaper advertisement done in color for this film. Another great inspiration to Without Heartbeat, Odd Man Out. The look of Odd Man Out was had a big impact on Without Heartbeat, and I was going to mention it, but didn't get around to it because then I went and grabbed this stuff. Anyways, I don't know how well you can see this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, but back to The Third Man. This is John Ford. This is not The Third Man. But I have, from 1950, a vintage piece of film history. This is, oh shit, can't take it out right now because it's getting tricky. It's trying to take the other thing out with it. Hold up. Sorry, this is not very riveting for you to look at, but this is not newspaper. This is from 1950, an American, the movie came out in 1949, but 1950 in America. This is an American sheet music for The Third Man, and I was talking about how memorable the music is in these films. So, here, let me get this closer to you. There you go. Look at that vintage look I don't think this. No, this is not very expensive. Now, for some reason, this was also printed with a red cover instead of orange. You got a red cover. I bought this at an antique mall, and it had the orange cover, so that's the one I got. I'm not too picky. It might have even had a blue cover too. I can't remember. But yeah, this was just made to coincide with the film. Then you got Third Man. This is a second film. Excerpts from the beautiful cafe Mozart Waltz from the picture The Third Man. Now, you can tell it's American because I checked and it said printed in New York. At one point, I checked that when I got this. Yeah, right there. But another way to tell that it's American is it says The Third Man, and it's written with a 3RD. Third, instead of spelt out THIRD. So that's that, and I'm gonna just set these aside and put them away later. And since I was on the topic of Carol Reed movies, I thought I would bring those out. Okay. Back to the movie collection. So film noir had a big inspiration to it. Especially the way those films were shot, the cinematography, like the lighting, for example. A lot of those movies had had very shadowy lighting. And the morals of the characters in those movies was always kind of, you never really knew if the characters, their morals were skewed. And this was really because a lot of these people making these movies were either making them during the Second World War or making them after the Second World War when veterans were coming home either disfigured maybe without limbs, like limbs amputated, or in general just scarred from the war and what they had experienced. I mean, this is post-World War II films came out post the Holocaust. People were coming back to America, and some people were immigrating to America, and they didn't know how to deal with the trauma they had suffered over the war, because of the war, and the things that they now knew about, and the things they now realized humanity was capable of. And you got the same kind of complexity after World War I with a lot of horror monster movies. Like, for example, The Phantom of the Opera is probably as popular as it was, the Lon Chaney one from 1925. I mean, this is like really off topic, but I still want to show it off because it's a great movie, in my opinion. This film, Phantom of the Opera from 1925. Part of the reason why this was so popular was probably because Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, is a disfigured character, and he is a complete outcast. He can never really fit in. That's probably how a lot of the veterans who came back disfigured from the war felt. A lot of them probably felt like they could never really fit into society again, and a lot of them probably felt like outcasts. The fact that he was disfigured most likely had a big impact on how popular the film is. Same with this movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I mean, he's a hunchback. He's not really disfigured, but he's repulsive to everybody. And I think that had a big impact on why those films were so popular. That's another Lon Chaney movie, also from Universal Studios. Anyways, the lighting, the use of shadow. A lot of those movies weren't made on big budgets. I mean, some of them were, but not all of them. And so a lot of the films were drenched in shadow so that they could compensate for not having enough money for sets or for really extravagant sets. And then also to save money, they would either go to the back lot or they would just go out in the street to film a lot of those scenes. I'm going to talk about some French films I really like. This movie, Elevator to the Gallows, which has a great score by Miles Davis, was another inspiration. This is 1958. It's technically a noir film, though usually you would consider only American and some British films to be noir. However, there were international movies that fit the noir category. And actually it was the French who came up with the term film noir. After World War II, when all these films that America had made and that Britain had made were coming to France for the first time, because keep in mind they were occupied by the Nazis over the war, so the French were not able to see American and British films during the war. It wasn't until after the war that they were able to see these movies, and the critics realized, and probably the audiences too, the regular audiences, realized that these were a different type of crime film than the gangster movies with James Cagney, you know, and what's his name, the guy who plays Little Caesar. I also have that film. So I mean, might as well just show it off since I own it. Edward G. Robinson, that's what I was thinking of. They weren't like Little Caesar. They were completely different. And Scarface, the original, from 1932, which is also a good movie, and which actually has Boris Karloff in it, playing a gangster, which is surprising. But anyways, these noirs were a different breed of film than what French audiences had been used to for American crime movies. And this was definitely inspired by film noir. This is Elevator to the Gallows, a really, really, really good movie. The title makes it seem like it's kind of a horror film. It's not. It's just a crime movie. It's got music by Miles Davis, which is amazing. I'm a fan of Miles Davis, so it's really cool to see, you know, my love of cinema intersect with music I like. And it's got an incredible score. This is like one of my favorite movie scores of all time. It's just amazing. And the usage of music in this film also had an inspiration on Without Heartbeat, because sometimes I just like to let the music ride. Because a lot of times the music says more than dialogue does. You can convey what's on the character's mind or what the character wants to say just with music alone, if it's good music and if it fits. So there were a lot of instances where instead of just doing the lazy option with characters saying how they feel by saying it, you know, I put music to convey what they were feeling without words. And I think that that creates a bigger emotional response. It also just looks great. So there are sequences in here of people just walking down the streets at night with this great jazz music playing over it. So it's just amazing. And Larry, the main who plays the main character of the film, he's kind of a musical genius, if I might say so. And he ended up making an R&B kind of soul soundtrack. Not really soul, but he made an R&B soundtrack to it, as well as some other genres that he dabbled into. But it's mainly R&B. And we kind of did the soul R&B version of what Miles Davis did with Elevator to the Gallows. I mean, maybe I'm kind of making us sound cooler than we are, but that's what I like to think. So there's that. And if I'm talking about French films that inspired it, this is one of the biggest influences to the film. I mean, this and the Game trilogy, these two were the biggest inspirations. But Le Samouraï by Jean-Pierre Melville. I got a bunch of Melville films. He mainly did crime films. He did some films that weren't crime, but most of them were crime gangster movies. Where is The Red Circle? Le Cercle Rouge, aka The Red Circle, is a good heist film, also with Alain Delon, who is, in my opinion, one of the best actors alive. I mean, he's just incredible. He really doesn't get... A lot of people talk about how Alain Delon, oh, he's so handsome. He's got such good fashion in his movies. He's such a cool, rugged character, or not character actor, but he's such a cool, rugged actor. He's actually got a lot of talent too. I mean, nobody really ever says, oh, he's such a great actor. They say, oh, he was so handsome when he was young. But he was a really good actor. I mean, incredible. It's just that type of role that he plays doesn't really get much attention compared to like Marlon Brando or something, you know. But this is a really good film. The Samurai, also a Hitman movie. And this film did directly inspire the Game trilogy, the Japanese films that I just showed you. This was a direct inspiration to them. Understandably so. It's a masterpiece. This is one of those movies I rewatch, and every time I rewatch it, it never gets old. It's also got great music. And again, the look of the film had an impact on Without Heartbeat, so that's cinematography. Okay, speaking of cinematography, this movie didn't, on a narrative sense, didn't really impact Without Heartbeat, but the cinematography of Taxi Driver, especially the night sequences, the scenes at night, they kind of have like a greenish look to them, in the taxi and outside the taxi, even just the shots in the street, you know, looking out into the street towards the beginning of the film, but really throughout the entire movie. That had a big inspiration on how the colors would look in Without Heartbeat. And it's probably going to inspire the look of many of my later films. I just love the way everything looks in this film. The cinematography is incredible. And also, this is one of the classic films of the 70s. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it to most people. You might not like it because it's kind of more of a disturbing movie in some ways. It's very uncomfortable in a lot of places. And also, a lot of people watch this film and the main character, they get the wrong they look at him in the wrong way, and people kind of, especially in recent years, people have looked at this character and seen him as some sort of hero. He's not really supposed to be a hero. You don't need the filmmaker to tell you he's not supposed to be a hero. That really should be common sense. But, you know, whatever. So that's why I would say I recommend it to most people, because some people also just would not enjoy a film like this, because, like I said, it's very uncomfortable in a lot of places, and disturbing in other places too, and both at the same time. But I also wouldn't recommend it to everybody, because a lot of people get the wrong messages from this film, which is unfortunate. Oh, and Taxi Driver is right next to the Godfather films in my collection. If you haven't seen the Godfather films, check those out too. And the Godfather films are next to Apocalypse Now, so if you haven't seen Apocalypse Now, check that out. Anyways, back to French films. Oh, you know, another good Melville film, two other good Melville films. Bob Le Flamboyant, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm not French, and this one. So good. So good. And Jean-Paul Belmondo died recently, again. All of these great people are dying. What the fuck? So, more French films I really like. Oh, this is not really, this is not a crime film. This is a war movie about the French Renaissance. This is really good though. Another Jean-Pierre Melville film. Okay. I could really just talk about these movies for hours. I could just pull any movie like this great one, Mirror, and just talk about it, even though it didn't really directly inspire Without Heartbeat. So many of these movies I could just talk about for hours, really all of them. But to keep it on track, the films of Jean-Luc Godard, especially the look of the films, I keep saying that, but the cinematography of those films, maybe this is a sign that Without Heartbeat might have had too much style and not enough substance, I don't know. Which is something I've wondered about looking back on that film. Is maybe if I made the runtime a little bit longer, or I was more economical, I don't know if that's a word, or if I used the runtime of the film in a more economic way, I could have told more and had more depth and complexity with the characters than what I have with the final product. I don't know, but that is one of the issues that I have with that film, is that it feels like there could be so much more to it. That's just my opinion though. So, and as the creator of my movies, I feel like I have to be critical of them so that my next movies can have some sort of progress from where the last ones took off. So where I ended the last ones, I need to have progress. So I look at what I did good, and then I look at what maybe I didn't do good or what I'd like to improve on, and then hopefully that'll help me make better movies so that there's a progression. So anyways, the films of Jean-Luc Godard, particularly his early 60s films, or just his 60s films, he did I think 12 features in the 60s, which is a lot when you think about that. Because I mean, I haven't even done a single feature film in the 2020s. So, and he started out his career with Breathless, which is like about an hour and 30 minutes, and then he just kept making features over, like, throughout the rest of the decade. He just kept making features, sometimes usually I think 2 a year. It's pretty impressive. And then also for them all to be consistently pretty good and pushing the barriers of cinema, it's pretty impressive. Band of Outsiders, this is the first one that I saw. the cinematography, the lighting, the way the characters act, the spontaneity of it. It's all stuff that I was trying to go for with Without Heartbeat. Also, and this is a heist movie, so this is a crime film. Also, this film, I really like this film, Masculine and Feminine. The way the music is cut in this film is really cool, so check this one out. And I wanted to have moments of music in Without Heartbeat that were reminiscent, not reminiscent, but which were cut similarly to in Masculine and Feminine. It's really cool. And this is a good film about, like, I guess you could call it gender politics, but it's also about the baby boomer generation, and kind of it's critically looking at them. And oh man, it's so good. It is really good. It's just a cool film. And man, I love that grayscale look. Another another Belmondo film. Oh yeah, Jean-Paul Belmondo, which came out right before this one. These came out the same year in 1965. This came out first, and then he dropped this masterpiece. Both are really good. This is the more well-known one. This one's also in color. This is another crime movie. One of the femme fatale of this movie is an arms dealer, so I'd say it's a crime film. Pour the Foul, basically just about leaving your dull, boring world behind into adventure. But shit goes down later in the film, so it's a good movie though. The way I described it. But anyways, this one's really good. I always say Pour la Foul. Again, I'm not French, so I might just be saying it wrong, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but that's okay. This one's good. Breathless, his first film, also with Belmondo, also known as About to Shuffle. Breathless, really good. Another gangster movie. These are all kind of crime movies. Most of these are, but this one's really cool. The jump cut. I mean, my movie, especially at the beginning, has a lot of jump cuts in it, and this kind of told me, you know, sometimes it's okay to do a jump cut if you keep a take in and you don't do a jump cut. Sometimes there are glaring technical flaws that ruin the take. Sometimes it's best to just cut different parts out. Sometimes it just works for the better. But the spontaneity of Godard's films is really, really cool. I like that a lot. My movie Without Heartbeat only had, I think, about a 12-page script, and the idea is that every minute on screen is a page from the script. But I did it more in the style of Godard, where it was more spontaneous, and I let myself, while I was filming it, have room to improvise and create in the moment. So that whole style, and a short, non-direct script too, which gives me room for freedom. Was another thing that I got from Godard. And one last Godard movie I really like. This is a gangster science fiction spy movie. Alphaville, A Story of Lemmy Caution. I like throw that in front of the camera really quickly. This is really cool. It's got the Lemmy Caution character, who a lot of English-speaking audiences probably aren't familiar with. He's kind of like a French James Bond. Although I think he's actually that character is older than James Bond. And it's got Eddie Constantine, who played Lemmy Caution in many films, reprising his role. And this is really unlike any of the other Lemmy Caution films. Eddie Constantine, understandably, didn't really like it because of the way that he was shot. He was shot with the lighting really to look ugly and to look appalling. But it works because his face almost looks like it's made out of stone, and it looks like each wrinkle in his face is some sort of story of grief that he's endured. And he's got a really perfect face for crime, like Humphrey Bogart, where he looks aged and worn, like he's lived a long life, and he's only middle-aged, but it looks like he's lived so much in that time. It is really cool. I mean, it's a little hard to follow. Sometimes I just like to vibe with movies. You know, I don't really care about following the plot. I just like to vibe with them. and if I don't understand all the details, it doesn't really matter. I think most people are like that, they just don't realize it. Like, how many James Bond movies do you know exactly everything that's going on? In Mission Impossible movies, do you know everything that's going on in the plot? Anyways, in my opinion, narrative is a little bit more important than plot. Narrative is what happens between plot points. And I think that's sometimes more important. It's those little moments that make a film memorable, not necessarily the plot. And also, it's those little moments that usually tell you more and give you more insight about the characters in the film. Anyways, this one's really good. It's a science fiction movie, but it's shot in, at the time, modern France. I mean, technically still modern France. It was 1965 also. What in the hell? Did he make 3 movies? Oh, no, this was 1966. This was 1965. Okay, so I got the years wrong on this one. But this was made after. Okay, so anyways, really, really cool stuff. It's very artsy, to be completely honest with you, so that might lose a lot of people, and a lot of people might watch this film and be like, oh, I don't really get it. It lost me. It's too artistic. But it's really cool in my opinion, so just watch it and vibe with it. Don't try to understand everything, because you might get it, you might not. Just watch it because it's a cool movie and vibe with it. What else could I even talk about? I don't know. I think I covered pretty much everything. And I've been talking for so long now, I probably lost most of the audience. But, you know, I love talking about movies, and there aren't many people I know that I can talk to about movies. I mean, I'm a teenager, so what other teenagers do you know that like this type of thing and that watch these types of movies? Most teenagers I know don't really watch movies from before the 1980s or 70s. It used to be like it was normal to watch movies from the 70s, but now the 70s are even too old for people, so I don't know. It's kind of sad. However, to be fair, the older I get, the more people my age start to become aware of this stuff. Like my friend Jay, occasionally I'll talk to him about like Sergio Leone westerns, old Godzilla films from the Showa era, and the Heisei era too, for that matter. Sometimes I'll talk to him about, you know, I talked to him one time about Casablanca. So, you know, some of my friends are literate with cinema. I don't know if that's a term, but some of my friends understand cinema. I mean, not many. I don't know if any of them really have seen as many films and have as much diverse taste as me, but a lot of them at least have, you know, some of them have a pretty good understanding of film history, or are at least a little bit cultured. So yeah, I love movies so much, and honestly, just looking at the shelf just makes me so happy. Just looking at the spines, the beautiful, colorful spines. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, one day I'll do a full collection tour. But yeah, that's right. You know, another good crime movie, The Bad Sleep Well. Check that one out with Toshiro Mifune, directed by Akira Kurosawa. Oh, it's so good. Okay, I'm getting kind of hungry. And as I've been talking for the last like hour, my phone's been going off. Like, I've been feeling it vibrate, so people are probably trying to contact me and, you know, hang out or something. So I should probably check that. But yeah, I love movies. You know, I hope you don't have to watch any of these movies that I just talked about, but I hope you go out today or whenever you have the time. Maybe not go out, but stay in maybe. And instead of getting into trouble, I hope you just watch some good movies. Like maybe just one good movie. Anything. Any movie that you think is going to be really good and worthwhile. Just check it out. Maybe it's a movie you haven't seen in a long time, or maybe it's a movie you've never really gotten around to watching, but you always kind of want to watch. Just check it out. Maybe it's just a film someone recommended, but go check out a good movie, you know? Anyways, that's really all for me. I'm gonna leave, so bye.